aviation is so dependent upon the category of fluids. Now we are going to start the chapter of atmosphere, which in general we are saying aviation is so dependent upon the category of fluids called gases and the effect of forces and pressures acting upon gases, that a discussion of the subject of the atmosphere is important to the persons maintaining and repairing aircraft. Now, data available about the atmosphere may determine whether a flight will succeed or whether it will even become airborne. The various components of the air around the earth, the changes in temperature and pressure at different levels above the earth, the properties of weather encountered by aircraft in flight, and many other detailed data are considered in the preparation of flight plans. Pascal and Torricelli have been credited with developing the barometer, an instrument for measuring atmospheric pressure. The results of their experiment are still used today with very little improvement in design or knowledge. They determine the air has weight which changes as altitude is changed with respect to sea level. Today scientists are also interested in how the atmosphere affects the performance of the aircraft and its equipment. Now, what is composition of the atmosphere? The atmosphere is a complex and ever-changes mixture. Its ingredients vary from place to place and from day to day. In addition to a number of gases, it contains quantities of foreign matter such as pollen, dust, bacteria, soot, volcanic ash, spores, and dust from outer space. The composition of air remains almost constant from the sea level up to the highest level, but its density diminishes rapidly at altitude. 6 miles up, for example, it is too thin to support respiration, and 12 miles up, there is not enough oxygen to support combustion. At a point several hundred miles above the earth, some gas particles spray out into space. Some, dragged by gravity, fall back into the ocean and air below. Other never returns but travel like satellites around the earth, and still other like hydrogen and helium escape forever from the earth's gravitational field. Physicists disagree as to the boundaries of the outer fringes of the atmosphere. Some think it begins 240 miles above the earth and extends to 400 miles. Others place its lower edge of 600 miles and its upper boundary at 6,000 miles. There are also certain nonconformities at various levels. Between 12 and 30 miles, high solar ultraviolet radiation reacts with oxygen molecules to produce a thin curtain of ozone, a very poisonous gas, without which life on Earth could not exist. This ozone filters out a portion of the sun lethal ultraviolet rays, allowing only enough to come through to give man sunburns, kill bacteria, and prevent rickets. At 50 or 65 miles up, most of the oxygen molecules begin to break down under solar radiation into free atoms and to form the incomplete molecule hydroxyl (OH) from water vapor. Also in this region, all the atoms become ionized. OH is the chemical name of hydroxyl. Studies of the atmosphere have revealed that the temperature does not decrease uniformly with increasing altitude. Instead, it gets steadily colder up to a height of about 7 miles, where the rate of temperature changes allows down abruptly and remains almost constant at minus 55 degrees centigrade, that is in bracket 218 degree Kelvin, up to about 20 miles. Then the temperature begins to rise to a peak value of 77 degree centigrade, that is in bracket 350 degree Kelvin, at the 55 mile level. Thereafter it climbs steadily, reaching 1270 degree centigrade, or in bracket 2543 Kelvin, and at a height of 250 to 400 miles. From the 50-mile level upward, a man or any other living creature without the protective cover of the atmosphere would be wild on the sunny side and frozen on the other. The atmosphere is divided into concentric layers of levels. Translation through this layer is gradual and without sharply defined boundaries. However, one boundary, the tropopause, exists between the first and second layer. The tropopause is defined as the point in the atmosphere at which the decrease in temperature with increasing altitude abruptly ceases between the tropopause and the stratosphere. The four atmosphere layers are the troposphere, stratosphere, ionosphere, and the exosphere. The upper portion of the stratosphere is often called the chemosphere or ozonosphere, and the exosphere is also known as the mesosphere. The troposphere extends from the Earth's surface to about 35,000 feet at middle latitudes, but varies from 28,000 feet at the polar to about 54,000 feet at the equator. The troposphere is characterized by large changes in temperature and humidity, and by generally turbulent conditions. Nearly all cloud formations are within the troposphere. Approximately 3/4 of the total weight of the atmosphere is within the troposphere. The temperature and absolute pressure in the troposphere steadily decreases with increasing altitude to a point where the temperature is approximately minus 55 degrees centigrade, that is in bracket, or 218 degree Kelvin, and the pressure is about 6.9 Hg, that is mercury, on a standard day. The atmosphere extends from the upper limits of the troposphere, or in bracket, and the tropopause, to an average altitude of 60 miles. In the stratosphere, the temperature decline virtually stops. However, at 18 or 20 miles up, it often descends at minus 63 degrees centigrade, that is in bracket 210 degree Kelvin. The ionosphere ranges from the 50-mile level to a level of 300 to 600 miles. Little is known about the characteristic of the ionosphere, but it is thought that many electrical phenomena occur there. Basically, this layer is characterized by the presence of ions and freed electrons, and the ionization seems to increase with altitude and in successive layers. The temperature increases from about 200 degree Kelvin at the lower limit to about 2500 degree Kelvin at the upper limit. These extremely high temperatures in the upper altitudes do not have the same significance as would corresponding temperatures at sea level. A thermometer reading in the region would be determined more by solar radiation than by the temperature because of the energy of the particles. The exosphere, or in bracket, or mesosphere, is the outer layer of the atmosphere. It begins at the altitude at 600 miles and extends to the limits of the atmosphere. In the layer, the temperature is fairly constant at 2500 degree Kelvin, and propagation of sound is thought to be impossible due to lack of molecular substance. Now, what is atmospheric pressure? The human body is under pressure since it exists at the bottom of sea of air. This pressure is due to the weight of the atmosphere. The pressure which the atmosphere applies to a square inch of area is equal to the weight of a column of air 1 square inch in cross section, which extends from that area to the top of the atmosphere. Since atmospheric pressure at any altitude is due to the weight of air above it, pressure decreases with increased altitude. Obviously, the total weight of air above an area at 15,000 feet would be less than the total weight of the air above an area at 10,000 feet. Atmospheric pressure is often measured by a mercury barometer. A glass tube somewhat over 30 inches in length is sealed at one end and filled with mercury in bracket Hg, capital H and small g. That is the chemical formula of mercury. It is then inverted and the open end placed in a dish of mercury. Immediately, the mercury level in the inverted tube will drop a short distance, leaving a small volume of mercury vapor at nearly zero absolute pressure in the tube just above the top of the liquid mercury column. The pressure acting upward at the lower end of the tube above the level of mercury in the dish is atmospheric pressure. The pressure acting downward at the same point is the weight of the column of mercury, indicates the pressure exerted by the atmosphere. This means of measuring atmospheric pressure gives rise to the practice of expressing atmospheric pressure in inches of mercury, that is in small in dot Hg, rather than in pounds per square inch, that is P dot S dot I. It may be seen, however, that a simple relationship exists between pressure measurement in psi and in inches of mercury. 1 cubic of inches of mercury weighs 0.491 pound. Therefore, a pressure of 30 inch of mercury would be the equivalent of 0.491 into 30 equals to 14.73 psi. A second means of measuring atmospheric pressure is with an aneroid barometer. This mechanical instrument lends itself to use on airplane much more adequately than does the mercury barometer. Aneroid barometers, in bracket altimeters, are used to indicate altitude in flight. The calibration are made in thousands of feet rather than in psi. For example, the standard pressure at sea level is 29.92 inches of mercury or 14.69 psi. At 10,000 feet above sea level, standard pressure is 20.58 inches of mercury or 10.10 psi. Altimeters are calibrated so that if the pressure exerted by the atmosphere were 20.58 inches of mercury, the altimeter would point to 10,000 feet. In other words, the altimeter is calibrated so that it indicates the altitude at which the prevailing atmospheric pressure would be considered standard pressure. Thus, the altitude read from the altimeter being dependent upon atmospheric pressure is called pressure altitude, or capital H in that P is written. Actually, an altimeter will read pressure altitude only when the altimeter adjustment is set at 29.92 inches of mercury. A third expression is occasionally used to indicate atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure may be expressed in atmosphere. For example, a test may be conducted in a pressurized chamber under a pressure of 6 atmosphere. This merely means that the pressure is 6 times as great as standard sea level. Pressure. Atmospheric density. Since both temperature and pressure decreases with altitude, it might appear that the density of the atmosphere would remain fairly constant with increased altitude. This is not true, however, for pressure drops more rapidly with increased altitude and does the temperature. The result is that density decreases with increased altitude. By use of general gas law studied earlier, it can be shown that for a particular gas, pressure and temperature determine the density. since standard pressure and temperature have been associated with each altitude. The density of the air at the standard temperatures and pressures must also be considered standard. Thus, a particular atmospheric density is associated with each altitude. This gives rise to the expression density altitude, symbol H below that D. A density altitude of 15,000 feet is the altitude at which the density of the same as that considered standard for 15,000 feet. Remember, however, that density altitude is not necessarily true altitude. For example, on a day when the atmospheric pressure is higher than standard and the temperature is lower than standard, the density which is standard at 10,000 feet might occur at 12,000 feet. In this case, at any actual altitude of 12,000 feet, we have air which has same density at standard air at 10,000 feet. Density altitude is a calculated altitude obtained by correcting pressure altitude for temperature. The water content of air has slight effect on the density of air. It should be remembered that humid air at a given temperature and pressure is higher than dry air at the same temperature and pressure. Now, what is we have to know about the water content of the atmosphere. In the troposphere, the air is seldom completely dry. It contains water vapor in either of two forms. Number one is fog, or number two is water vapor. Fog consists of minute droplets of water held in suspension by the air. Clouds are composed of fog. The height of which some clouds extend in a good indication of the pressure of the presence of water in the atmosphere almost up to the stratosphere. As a result of evaporation, the atmosphere always contains some moisture from the form of water vapor. The moisture in the air is called the humidity of the air. Moisture does not consist of tiny particles of liquid held in suspension in the air as in the case of fog, but is an invisible vapor truly as gaseous as the air with which it mixes. Fog and humidity both affect the performance of the aircraft. In flight at cruising power, the effects are small and receive no consideration. During takeoff, however, humidity has important effects. Two things are due to compensate for the effects of humidity on takeoff performance. Since humid air is less dense than dry air, the allowable takeoff gross weight of an aircraft is generally reduced for operation in area that are consistently humid. Secondly, because the power output of reciprocating engine is decreased by humidity, the manifold pressure may have to be increased above the recommended for takeoff in dry air in order to obtain the same power output. Engine power output is calculated on dry air since water vapor is incombustible. Its pressure in the atmosphere is a total loss as far of contributing to power output. The mixture of water vapor and air is drawn through the carburetor and fuel is metered into it as though it were all the air. This mixture of water vapor, air and fuel enters the combustion chamber where it is ignited. Since the water vapor will not burn, the effective fuel or by air ratio is increased and the engine operates as though it were on the excessively rich mixture. The resulting horsepower loss under humid conditions can therefore be attributed to the loss of volumetric efficiency due to displaced air and the incomplete combustion due to excessively rich fuel by air mixture. The reduction in power that can be expected from humidity is usually given in charts in the flight manual. There are several types of charts in use. Some merely show the expected reduction in power due to humidity. Others show the boost in manifold pressure necessary to restore full takeoff power. The effect of fog on the performance of an engine is very noticeable, particularly on engines with high compression ratio. Normally, some detonation will occur during acceleration due to the high BMEP, that is brake mean effective pressure developed. However, on a foggy day, it is difficult to cause detonation to occur. The explanation of this lies in the fact that fog consists of unvaporized particles of water. When these particles enter the cylinders, they absorb a tremendous amount of heat energy. In the process of vaporizing, the temperature is thus lowered and the decrease in sufficient to prevent detonation. Fog will generally cause a decrease in horsepower output. However, with a supercharged engine, it will be possible to use higher manifold pressures without danger of detonation. The detonation term we will discuss in the part of engine, and many things which came here related to the engine and flight, we will go for different section or different chapters. Now, what is absolute humidity? Absolute humidity is the actual amount of the water vapor in the mixture of air and water. It is sometimes expressed in gram per cubic meter, sometimes pounds per cubic feet. The amount of water vapor that can be present in the air is dependent upon the temperature and pressure. The higher the temperature, the more water vapor the air is capable of holding, assuming constant pressure. When air has all the water vapor it can hold at the prevailing temperature and pressure, it is said to be saturated. Relative humidity. Relative humidity is the ratio of the amount of water vapor actually present in the atmosphere to the amount that would be present in if the air were saturated at the prevailing temperature and pressure. This ratio is usually multiplied by 100 and expressed as a percentage. Suppose, for example, that a weather report includes the information that a temperature is 75 degree Fahrenheit and the relative humidity is 56%. This indicates that the air holds 56% of water vapor required to saturate it at 75 degree Fahrenheit. If the temperature drops and the absolute humidity remains constant, the relative humidity will increase. This is because less water vapor is required to saturate the air at the lower temperature. Now, what is dew point? The dew point is the temperature to which humid air must be cooled at constant pressure to become saturated. If the temperature drops below the dew point, condensation occurs. People who wear glasses have had the experience of going from cold outside air into the warm room and having moisture collect quietly on the glasses. This happened because the glasses were below the dew point temperature of the air in the room. The air immediately in contact with the glasses was cooled below its dew point temperature and some of the water vapor was condensed out. This principle is applied in determining the dew point. A vessel is cooled until water vapor begins to condense on its surface. The temperature at which this occurs is the dew point. Now, what is vapor pressure? Vapor pressure is the portion of the atmospheric pressure that is exerted by the moisture in the air, in bracket expressed in tenths of an inch of mercury. The dew point for a given condition depends upon the amount of water pressure present. Thus, a different relationship exists between the vapor pressure and the dew point. Now, what is the wet and dry bulb temperature? Vapor pressure and humidity may be determined from charts based on the wet and dry bulb temperatures. The dry bulb temperature is obtained from the ordinary thermometer. The wet bulb temperature is obtained from a thermometer which has its bulb covered with a thin piece of wet cloth. Because of moisture evaporation from the wet cloth, the wet bulb will read lower than the dry bulb. The more rapid the evaporation, the greater will the will be the difference in readings. The rate of evaporation is dependent upon the degree of saturation of the air. In using a wet bulb thermometer, it must be moved through the air at a rate of about 1200 feet per minute to give a worthwhile reading. This is accomplished by mounting both the wet and dry bulb thermometers in a frame which can be hand rotated around a pivot and the desirable rate at rate of 12,000 feet per minute. If the area is saturated, no evaporation will take place in the wet and dry bulb. Temperature will be the same. Thus, these two temperatures coincide at the dew point. Now, what is physical laws related to the atmosphere? Although air is composed of various gases and must be treated as a mixture for certain purposes, it is treated as a uniform gas. In aerodynamic calculations, air in the fluid since it has the fluid property to flow, and it is also a gas since its density is readily varied. As the usual in engineering work, certain simplifying assumptions are made. One standard assumption is that in dry air there is no water vapor present. Ordinary flight takeoff charts may be corrected for vapor pressure, but subsonic flight does not consider vapor pressure as an appreciable factor. Another standard assumption is that fraction or viscosity effect may be neglected when dealing with airflow. The air is then considered to be the perfect fluid. However, some exception must be made, particularly in the case of thin boundary layers of slow moving air directly adjacent to a moving body. The kinetic theory of gases applied to air. The kinetic theory states that a gas is composed of small distinct particles called molecules. The size of the molecules is small compared to the average distance between them. Further, the molecules are moving about at a high rate of speed in random directions, so that they are constantly colliding with one another and with the walls of any container that may surround them. The pressure produced by a gas is the result of these continuous impacts against a surface, and since the impacts are essentially infinite in number, a steady pressure is affected. Just as pressure is produced by a molecular impact against a surface, it is also transmitted by molecular impact, assuming that molecules are perfectly elastic in bracket that no friction exists between them. A pressure wave once started will continue indefinitely for most purposes. This assumption is adequate. However, it is not completely correct. For instance, sound represents in a series of weak pressure waves to which the ear is sensitive. If the energy that the sound represents were not lost, the sound would continue indefinitely. It follows that this imperfect elasticity must in some ways may be associated with fluid friction or viscosity. Since the presence of viscosity is also a source of energy loss. On the basis of kinetic theory, pressure may be increased in two ways. First, by increasing the number of molecules in a given place, which is the same as increasing the density, and secondly by increasing the speed of the molecules, which can be done by increasing the temperature, since the temperature produces an increase in the molecular speed. Analysis of the kinetic theory leads to one definite relationship between the temperature, pressure and density of a gas, which when the gas is subjected to a given set of conditions. This relationship is known as the equation of state. Now, what is equation of state? Provided that the temperature and pressure of a gas are not excessively different from those normally experienced on the Earth's surface, the following equations hold true. That is, capital PV equals to capital RT. All are in capital. P is also capital, V is also capital, and R and T both are capital. Where capital P equals to pressure in pounds per square feet, capital V equals to a specific volume, capital R equals to a constant for a given gas, that is for air R equals to 53.345, and T, capital T equals to absolute temperature in bracket Rankine equals to degree Fahrenheit plus 459.4. If the temperature and pressure are such that the gas becomes a liquid, or if the pressure falls to such a value that uniform pressure no longer exists, the equation will be invalid. In practical aeronautical work, these extremes are only encountered in a supersonic wind tunnel or in the outer portions of the atmosphere. This formula must be further clarified for practical engineering by the introduction of air density. Now, what is standard atmosphere? If the performance of the aircraft is computed either through flight test or wind tunnel test, some standard reference condition must be determined first in order to compare results with those of similar tests. The conditions in the atmosphere vary continuously, and it is generally not possible to obtain exactly the same set of conditions on two different ways or even on the two successive flights. Accordingly, there must be set up group of standard conditions that may be used arbitrarily for reference. The set of standard conditions presently used in the United States is known as the US Standard Atmosphere. The standard atmosphere approximately meets the average condition existing at 40-degree latitude and is determined on the basis of the following assumptions. The standard sea level conditions are pressure at 0-degree altitude, that is P, and that written underneath written 0 equals to 29.92 inches of mercury. Temperature at 0-degree altitude, capital T, underneath written 0 equal to 15 degrees centigrade equal to 59 degree Fahrenheit. Gravity at 0-degree altitude, small g, underneath written 0 equals to 32.174 feet per second square. The US Standard Atmosphere is the agreement with the International Civil Aviation Organization, that is the ICAO, standard atmosphere over their common altitude range. The ICAO standard atmosphere has been adopted as standard by most of the principal nations of the world. Now, variation from standard days. As may be expected, the temperature, pressure, density, and water vapor content of the air varies considerably in the troposphere. The temperature at 40-degree latitude may range from 50 degrees centigrade at low altitude during the summer to minus 70 degrees centigrade at high altitudes during the winter. As previously stated, temperature usually decreases with an increase in altitude. Exceptions to this rule occur when cooler air is trapped near the earth by the warmer layer. This is called a temperature inversion, commonly associated with frontal movement of the frontal of air masses. Pressure likewise varies at any given pressure point in the atmosphere. On a standard day at sea level, pressure will be 29.92 inches of mercury. On non-saturated days, pressure at sea level will vary considerably about or below this figure. Density of the air is determined by the pressure and temperature acting upon it. Since the atmosphere can never be assumed to be standard, a conventional method of calculating density has been devised. Since air pressure is measured in conventional terms, it is expedient to utilize this aneroid altimeter as a pressure gauge and refer to the term pressure altitude instead of atmospheric pressure. Now, what is pressure altitude? Now, pressure altitude is the altitude of the standard atmospheric corresponding to a particular value of air pressure. The aircraft altimeter is essentially a sensitive barometer calibrated to indicate altitude in the standard atmosphere. With the altimeter of the aircraft set at 29.92 inches of mercury, the dial will indicate the number of feet above the below a level of where 29.92 inches of mercury exist. Not necessarily above or below sea level unless a standard day condition exists. In general, the altimeter will indicate the altitude at which the existing pressure would be considered standard pressure. The symbol capital H underneath P, small p, is used to indicate pressure altitude. Bernoulli's principle. We have discussed earlier, but here we have to go for the atmosphere relation to atmosphere. Bernoulli's principle. It is related to atmosphere only because air is in the fluid. Air is as a fluid in which aircraft flies. General. In the earlier discussion of fluids, Bernoulli principle was introduced to explain the relationship between velocity and pressure of a liquid flowing through a venturi. Since Bernoulli's principles applies to fluids, which by definition include both gases and liquids. Its application to gases, air, is included at this point to explain the relationship between air and velocity and pressure in the surface of an airfoil. How an aircraft wing react with the atmosphere. An airfoil is any surface designed to obtain a reaction from the air through which it moves. Wings, ailerons, elevators, stabilizers, propeller blades, and helicopter rotors are all aerofoils. The reaction for which wings are designed is called lift. A wing produces lift because of a pressure difference, and the greater this difference, the more lift develops. If the air pressure above a wing is the same as the below it, there is no lift. But if the pressure above a wing is reduced and the pressure below increased, then lift is produced. The strong air pressure below the wing moves the wing upward against the weaker pressure above the wing. But what causes these unequal pressures? An examination of the shape of an aircraft wing discloses that it has been designed to create a pressure difference. If a wing is cut from leading edge to trailing edge, the end view of the cut is a profile section, similar to the one shown in the figure. The forward part of the airfoil profile is rounded and is called the leading edge. The aft part is narrow and tapered and is called the trailing edge. A reference line often is used discussing airfoils is the chord, an imaginary straight line joining the extremities of the leading and trailing edge. The curved upper surface of the airfoil is called the camber. The lower surface of normally straight or only straightly curved. An airfoil is very similar in shape to half a venturi section, which will be shown in the figure of A. The throat or restricted portion of the venturi as illustrated. This airflow through the venturi is indicated by flow lines. In B of the figure, one half of a venturi restriction is shown. Together with the airflow over its curved surface, note that these portions of a venturi base has the same profile as that of an airfoil. To understand how lift is produced by an aircraft wings, Bernoulli's principle is applied to an airfoil. This principle reveals that the pressure of fluid in bracket liquid or gas decreases at points where the speed of the fluid increases. In other words, high speed is associated with low pressure and low speed with high pressure. The wing or airfoil of an aircraft is designed to increase the velocity of the airflow above its surface, thereby decreasing pressure above the airfoil. Simultaneously, the impact of the air on the lower surface of the airfoil increases the pressure below. This combination of pressure decreases above the airfoil and increase below the airfoil produces lift.